Hi everyone, welcome to IGNOU's classroom. We are continuing on our quantitative analysis for managerial application series, and in this video we will be talking about sampling methods. A few of the points that we'll be covering in this video include why we go for sampling, what are the different types of sampling, what are the various probability sampling methods as well as non-probability sampling methods, and a basic introduction into the sampling size. So let's get started. Why exactly do we go for sampling? And can you think of any incident in your own life where you have actually applied sampling? I'll tell you my case, which is I think the case for almost all people in the world. Generally, almost everybody does it if you go for shopping, especially if you're going for shopping in the fruit section. If it is a grape, then we pluck one grape out of the lot to taste it and see whether actually that grape is sweet or sour before buying it, right? Something which we all do. So what we are actually doing over there, since we can't eat every grape over there before deciding to buy 1 kg of grapes, what we do is we randomly pick one sample, and we eat it, right? If you're going to buy some nuts, they give you a sample from the lot, right? They just randomly pick 2 or 3 cashew nuts or almonds and they give you. We eat that and decide whether or not we want to buy it. Similarly, if a new product is launching, especially in the FCMG category, that is FMCG category, fast moving consumer goods category, be it coffee, be it any new variety of ready made cakes or buns or biscuits. If you go into a supermarket or a hypermarket, there will be small stalls over there wherein people will be sitting and giving you samples, handing out samples for you to try, and if you like it you can buy it, and otherwise you can leave it, right? So that is all real world examples of sampling. And why we go for that is because we want to find out something about the larger group of elements. If it is grapes, then the whole bunch of grapes, or if it is a biscuit, then the whole category or whole packets of biscuits that you will be seeing of the same Britannia or Dark Fantasy, whatever it is, in the market, and deciding to buy it by just studying a small sample of it or only a part of it. That is referred to as sampling. While we go and learn about sampling, there are a few other terms which we have to keep in mind. So first one is population. What is population? It is the collection of all the elements about which some inference is to be made. So in the case of grapes, the whole batch of grapes that has come from that particular garden, or which they have which is there currently in the market, which the shopkeepers have bought and kept. Okay, that is the population. If you're talking about Britannia biscuits, that whole batch of biscuits is what we are talking about, population. If we want to find out, say, like the annual income, or find out the average income of everybody in India, then population is the entire Indian population. So that is population. Now, any characteristic of a population, we refer to it as parameter. And a small subset or a part of that population is a sample. And any characteristic of the sample is called a statistic. So, a characteristic of population is parameter. A characteristic of the sample is statistic. And the complete enumeration of population is called census. If we are going to each and every person or each and every element and trying to find out, like if you are eating every single grape in that say fruit shop, then what you did right there is a census. Nobody's going to let you do that in a fruit shop. But in the national level, in many cases we have also taken part in census, right? So that is census. Now, why do we go for sampling? First and foremost, it is not a small task to study the entire population, especially if the population is quite huge. So time considerations are there, cost involved, then the physical impossibility of actually, like in the case of grapes, if they have just recently bought the grapes into the fruit shop and you're the first customer, there'll be a lot of grapes. You cannot possibly stand and eat each and every one of that grape, right? So the physical impossibility, the practical infeasibility, then then the quality of data collected, and if, say, by eating maybe a couple of grapes from the lot, if I can understand whether the batch of grapes is good, and if I can decide whether or not to buy that grape, then I need not eat the whole thing then and there, right? So that is it. Enough reliability of inference based on sampling. So these are a few reasons why we go for sampling rather than census. Okay, now types of sampling. There are basically 2 types of sampling, okay, and it depends upon who or what is allowed to govern the sample selection, like how we are picking up the samples, or who decides what to be used as a sample. Based on that, we have two different types of samples, that is the probability sampling methods and the non-probability sampling methods. So a few of the probability sampling methods are, first and foremost, which we all would know, simple random sampling with or without replacement. That is just simply just randomly selecting. Okay, so in the case of grapes, you might randomly select 2 grapes. Okay, now naturally in the case of grapes, you pick one sample grape, you will eat it. Okay, you will not keep that sample back. But if you're taking apples, okay, sometimes what could happen is that we take one apple, okay, we might slightly try to squeeze it, okay, without damaging it much. Some people actually keep squeeze and make a dent, which is actually not that commendable. But and then rather than, most of the time what happens is that the sample apple which we took, okay, for inspecting at the first time, most often what we do is we take this apple, we inspect it, and then we keep it back. Okay, and after sometimes it happens that after deciding on which other apple to take, we will forget where we kept the first apple we took, and we could end up in picking the same apple the second time and sample that once again, right? So that situation is random sampling with replacement. That is, you took it, you inspected it, and you're keeping it back, and then you're taking another sample. So at that time, chances are that you might actually end up sampling the same same unit once again, rather than picking up the different unit. So that is simple random sampling. Then we have the systematic sampling, which you can see over here, right, wherein we are going by a systematic approach of like taking the nth item in the list, in the whole set of samples. So in this example, as you can see, every third person out of the sample we are out of the population of 9 people, we are putting it as a sample. But now the problem with the systematic sampling technique, as you might have identified by now, is that you look at the population, there are men and women, okay, but unfortunately, by the time we took the systematic sampling, you can see that we only got females. So you look at the sample over here, you will see that it is not a proper representation of our population in terms of when it comes to gender. So similarly, you must understand that be it this simple random sampling, systematic sampling, or stratified or cluster sampling, which we will learn about shortly, the problem is that each of these sampling techniques has its own advantages and disadvantages. And the appropriate sampling technique that we have to take would depend upon what is our problem and what is our hypothesis and all those things, like what exactly is our goal of data analysis or the sampling. That is what you can say decides on which sampling technique to use, along with the cost, the time, and such considerations as well. So when you go for stratified sampling, what happens is that your entire population you divide into various different stratas or levels, okay, and from each of those strata you will take samples. Like for example, if you're doing some analysis based on based on age, okay, then you have you have newborns, you have infants, you have toddlers, you have teenagers, you have young people, young adults, you have what you can say mid-aged people, you have seniors, you have very old people. So that is the various strata, and you will take a few samples, a couple of samples from each of these strata, and you will create your population. So maybe 2 or 3 newborns, 2 or 3 toddlers, 2 or 3 kids, 2 or 3 teenagers, 2 or 3 youngsters. You get the idea. So that is stratified sampling. Stratified, it means breaking into levels and sampling. Next we have cluster sampling, wherein we create clusters and we will pick up all the samples or all the elements in one cluster. Like for example, in the simplest example I could say is, if we want to say do some analysis based on all the people of Kerala. Now if we have to create a sample, maybe we can divide the entire state of Kerala into 14 districts and choose all people in one district, say Thrissur. Similarly, maybe if you are from Maharashtra, then maybe you can divide all the people into various other districts, like and maybe you can choose everybody from Navi Mumbai or everybody from Thane, like that. or everybody from Coimbatore. You get the idea, right? So that is cluster sampling. So those were the few probability sampling methods. Next we have non-probability sampling methods. That is also, here we are discussing 4 samples, 4 methods. We have few more also, but these are the 4 major sampling methods we use. First and foremost, the most easiest one is convenience sampling. So as the name suggests, it is totally up to my convenience. Okay, if I feel like talking to this person and collecting data from this person, I will go and collect from them. I don't think that maybe another person, I don't think that that guy is right. Okay, I don't feel comfortable looking at him, he's glaring, and also I'll not go and collect from him. Rather, I'll collect from the next person. Totally up to me, convenience. I'll go and collect data from my nearby house, or I'll go and collect from a hypermarket that is near to me rather than going to a far off place. Totally up to my convenience. That is convenience sampling. There is nothing other than my own selectivity or my own whim or selection or convenience which decides on whom I should include in my sample and whom I should not. Okay. Then we have judgmental sampling, wherein an expert, okay, in the field will decide which all samples to be taken. So if these are all the available samples, okay, the expert will decide which of these samples I should which of these what you can say, if this is the entire population, then which of these elements should be included in my sample will be decided by an expert. Okay, the expert will be the judge of my sample. Then that is judgment sampling. Quota sampling, it is again based on certain, the samples will be decided on certain quotas. Okay, like for example, the easiest quota that you can think of is the government seats, right? There is a quota for SC/ST people, there is a quota for OBC category. Okay, then the rest of it is general, right? So if the SC/ST seats are not filled, then that seats should be filled by people belonging to SC/ST category only. If there are certain then maybe there is certain minorities for reserved for minorities, like that, then people belonging to those minorities will only fill that seat, right? Even in your colleges or in any government jobs, you might have come across this. That is quota sampling. Okay, then we have purposive sampling, wherein the samples are chosen what you can say, for with a purpose at hand. Okay, so it helps to reduce the variation in data and get focused results. So suppose if I am what you can say, trying to focus my studies on, my analysis is for maybe MBA graduates of IGNOU, then my samples will be focused on MBA graduates of IGNOU and not the entire IGNOU. My population itself is limited. So maybe so what you can say, my samples will be collected with a purpose in mind. Okay, purposive sampling. So that those are the various non-probability sampling methods. So this is one of the few important questions, I would say, which has come up time and again in your term and examinations when you go for IGNOU MBA examination, MMPC 5. So I would suggest you take a little bit care and learn what are the various sampling techniques and the whole concept of sampling a little bit in depth, not just from the examination point of view, but also further down the line when you're actually practicing your whatever you have learned, whether it be for any institute or any enterprise, or be it you starting your own enterprise or organization or business, whatever. These are the things that you will be applying the most. Okay, so take a good note of it. So next is deciding on the sample size. Now that you have a you have a research problem for which you are collecting data, you have decided to go for sampling method because your population is large. How many people or how many samples should you include? That is your sample size. Now, deciding on the sample size depends upon the kind of variability that you are observing in your population. Like if your population's data is varied, like there are huge variations, then you will have to have those many samples, right? If it is not that much varied, like in the case of grapes, if you take one grape from the bunch or maybe two grapes from the bunch, the remaining grapes are not going to be drastically different from these two. Maybe there are one or two outliers, a couple of outliers maybe, but in general, just by picking one or two samples of grapes, you will be able to get an idea of how the entire sample is going to be, right? Sorry, the entire bunch is going to be. So that is the reason why we maybe have plucked or eaten one or two samples. But at the same time, if the variability is quite high, then you might have to actually take a couple of them, like maybe more than two, a sizable amount of samples. Okay, like for example, if you are trying to find the mean height of people in Thrissur, then just by looking at two people you cannot decide on the mean height. You will need more than two people, right? You will at least have to check maybe 2000 or 3000 people in the minimum, okay, to decide on the average height. Then confidence level as well as the budget of study. So so these are some of the few factors which we have to take care while we are deciding on the sample size. Now this decision on how many samples to be analyzed, that itself is a little bit vast topic which includes lots of not lots of it, which includes a few calculations also. There are formulas which are established which will help us in deciding on a good sample size. And if you are interested to learn more about it, let me know in the comment section below. I will plan on a video on that. Alright, so that is it. If you want to get the PPT, the slides PDF, I will leave a link to the place where you can find it in the description box below. Check it out and you can download it for free. And if you like how the class is going and if you're interested in learning more and joining our community, then consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification icon so that you will not miss another update. And I hope to see you all in the next class, in the next video. Thank you and bye-bye.